So one of my subscribers asked why I like Target so much. At the same time, I kind of had a bug up my butt that I'm going to cook off some chicken wings in a new method for my wife, who is diligent and went to yoga. So stick around for today's video. I'm going to go into a deep dive as to why I like Target so much, while I actually throw the smock on, get in the kitchen, start preparing the chicken wings to get them in the smoker, and you guys can join along. Hopefully, you like these cooking videos too, because it's a way for me to get my stuff done and still do a video.
Want to make your money work harder? Enjoy another video with Adam Kahn, the rational investor on stocks, real estate, and crypto. Subscribe now for your weekly dose of investment insights and hopefully learn a thing or two.
Hello, my YouTube friends, and happy Sunday. I hope you're all doing well. So, why do I love Target so much? There are really a lot of reasons I like Target. While I sit here and get my chicken wings ready. For one, the PE ratio currently for this year's sales is around 10.8. Well, historically, that's a pretty low PE ratio for Target. It's also low for the industry. I find that attractive when I'm evaluating stocks. I think it's important to find something that trades at what I'd call reasonable valuation. The other thing that makes it really attractive for me is their payout ratio to pay the dividend is like 50.87 or something. Like it's super reasonable. That's super low. For being able to pay out an 8%, or sorry, not 8%, 4.8% yield, like only using 50% of your free cash flow, that gives a lot of room for some slow periods ahead to be able to continue to pay that dividend. That's what I like about it more than anything else. And I'll go into some of the other details of things that I look at. But for me, that's what's so attractive because even a treasury right now only pays, what, around 4%. CDs, it's hard to get more than 4% depending on how far out you go. Actually, the shorter terms seem to be the ones I'm able to find a 4% yield. Now, I'm sure it exists out there, but if I'm getting 4.8 to own Target, and my risk is that the stock goes down, but if I really plan to hold it for 5 or 10 years, as far as I'm concerned, like I don't change the yield that I'm getting because the stock goes higher or lower. And what I mean by that is Target right now is paying 4.8%. If I buy it here, I think of my return is at 4.8%. If Target's stock price goes up and the yield drops, I still think of myself as getting that 4.8% return. I understand in today's value, I could take the profits and get out where it's paying a lower yield. But when I bought it, it was paying 4.8, and I just kind of think of it that way. If I were to buy a treasury, I'm not quite getting that much. Now, I have the risk of the market, the stock could go lower, but my comfort level is that it's only using 50% of their profits to be able to make that payment. So I'd like to think, even in a slowdown, unless it's a terrible slowdown, and in that situation, like everything's going to have a drawdown, not just Target, and there's really nothing I can do about the entire market going down. But as long as they're making enough to be able to continue to pay that dividend, well, I can use that money, whether it's to buy more stock at lower prices if it's going down, or I can use that money to pay bills or whatever it is I want to do with it. So, what am I doing here? Basically what I'm doing is I'm putting it in a bowl because I'm going to wash it first. I want to get all that juice and gunk off. Not everybody does that, but I like to do that. And I'm trying something new. I'm actually going to, we talked about it the other day. Um, I'm going to smoke the chicken wings. We bought these from Costco. They're the air chilled, all natural chicken wings. Getting a little more sensitive to that stuff. I don't mind spending a little bit more and going to Whole Foods. I'm hoping these are legit too and have all the better stuff for us. Because as I'm getting older, I'm being a little bit more careful about the things we put in our body. Also, I'm not just dropping it on the floor. I did put a garbage can back here. Kind of nice to just bring things around. We used to have a dog. I couldn't quite do that. So the other things that I like about Target, which are a little bit less important but still important, is they're still expected to grow 1% this year, even with the slowdown. They haven't changed that yet. I'd be curious at next earnings report, do they end up changing their guidance on that? And does that have to be lowered? And maybe they actually show a slowdown, which isn't great. But again, as long as they're making enough to be able to pay the dividend, I'm still okay with that. I wouldn't be thrilled if they cut it to a slowdown. But if you go out an additional year, they're predicting to grow at 8% again, which is pretty decent for a company as big as Target. The other thing is that they seem to get a 29% return on equity invested, which from what I was when I was doing my research, that's better than 78% of their competitors. Now, Target's pretty big. So to be able to continue to invest and grow at that type of pace is pretty impressive. And part of the other thing I like is historically, it looks like their average PE ranges around 17.5 to 20% instead of the 10.8 that it's trading now, which is part of why I think the valuation is so good. And if they're able to grow at 8% and they're trading at 10 times earnings, to me that's like a steal. That's a great deal. Again, these things can change. It's not anything that's a guarantee. But that's what I really like about them. They seem to be able to have enough profits to be able to weather a storm. They're still growing even during this downturn. Now, I'll be interested in what they say at the next quarter's report. Do they have to cut guidance further? Are they just unable to give guidance because they don't know what's going on with the macroeconomy stuff? Or are things actually catching themselves and they're not slowing as much as they were previously? And then forward a year out, they see all of this passing, which is kind of my thought on it and my thought on the markets in general. Now, as always, this is not financial advice. Please don't listen to me for the financial decisions you guys make. You need to reach out to your financial advisor, do your own research, because the positions that you guys are in are different than what I'm in. Please look at this as entertainment purposes only. But for me, Target seems really a great value here. I've actually been buying it since it was trading up around $120 a share. It's pretty rare that a stock falls that far, and I'm still comfortable with the trade, especially in my trading account. I do have Target in my set it and forget it account, but I also have it in the trading account because I felt like the valuations were getting so good that I wanted to have some on as a trade. The ones that I was buying around 120 are in my set it and forget it, and I was happy with what the yield was up there. Now, also keep in mind, I was fortunate enough to have a really good trade on it maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago. It fell down to, I think, around $103 a share or something. And I was buying it below 110 and it shot up to 170 and I covered. So I've watched it for a long time, just seeing the price fluctuations. I'm a little surprised to see it get below 100, but to be fair, I just see that as a really good opportunity. Of course, things can change. I've seen companies like Sears and Kmart, more Sears, that seem like they would never go out of business and they had a really rough go and obviously had to restructure. And a lot of times the stockholders get nothing and the bondholders get a few pennies on their dollars and then they restructure and start out new. That could obviously happen even with a company like Target. I don't really picture that because their earnings are very good. They make a lot of money. And the other thing that I love is so many people seem to hate them right now. Like to me, that means it's discounted. When people don't like it because they're woke, then they weren't woke and now they've offended both sides. And on top of it, people are protesting. I look for that stuff. When people are protesting companies, that fades. And usually it fades over a short period of time. And of course, you're going to have your outliers of people who never go back. But that's probably less than 1/100th of a percent. And maybe they're the guy watching this video that's going to tell me they're never going to go back to Target. But I've seen it so many times in so many companies where I hear, I'm never going to go to this company again. I'm never going to go to that company again. And then time passes and somehow their earnings do just fine and they start to grow again and nobody even seems to remember that. Oh, so what am I doing here? After I washed it, now I'm going to dry it. I'm going to probably put a little salt on it to try to draw out any extra water before I put it in the smoker in a little bit. And then I'll add some spices and stuff. And then my other plan is I'm going to make a few different sauces. I'll probably do like a honey mustard. I'll do a spicy barbecue. I'll probably do a traditional like buffalo wing hot sauce type of thing, and we'll do it in the smoker for an hour or so, and then I'll probably finish them off on the barbecue. And I'm hoping it comes out pretty good. I've never tried doing it this way, so maybe we'll stick around, see how it comes out on the tasting, and if I come up with other sauces to try. So I have the chicken sitting in the kitchen, a little bit of salt on it. I just turned on the smoker. For those of you who like to barbecue that don't have a smoker, uh, I got to tell you, it's a lot of fun. It really improves things a ton. To describe how ribs come out, I mean, better than the restaurants. And I've actually done brisket a few times. Brisket takes almost 24 hours. I tend to cook it for 18 or 20 hours, but it's way better than anything you'll find at the restaurants. And as you get comfortable with it, it's super simple. It does everything itself. And if you like to barbecue, you'd really surprise your friends when you see how it comes out. And I bought like the least expensive smoker I could find. Hooks up to propane. I just put a little water at the bottom. This is kind of how it works. You put some water at the bottom in a tray. Then you put, I like to use real wood more than the pellets. The pellets work better because they burn more evenly. You don't get a smoke ring quite the same way as if you use real wood. And I kind of like how the real wood, like it makes me feel like I'm doing it properly, for lack of a better way. But I also like using the different flavors of the real wood and whatever else. I do tend to mix the pellets in because they burn so much better. And I didn't go out and get one of those fancy schmancy Traeger ones, although I bet they're super simple. I think you just kind of set the temperature and it does everything for you. Anyway, we got that going. It's going to take 10 or 15 minutes while the smoker gets heated up as well as the water comes out of the chicken. And I'll continue about Target and the markets and the things that I see going on. And one of the things I even decided to look at before doing the video is insider buying and selling. And there really hasn't been anything that looks of note or makes me uncomfortable. The CEO, Brian Cornell, seems to sell on a consistent basis. So you can look into that, but he seems to have been doing that for a few years, and it's nothing that's been out of the ordinary. And if what I saw was correct, he doesn't have any sales coming anytime soon, which lets me start to think maybe the stock is inexpensive enough that he really doesn't want to sell anymore. The only purchases I saw, I wouldn't really count as purchases. They're stock options that actually came to fruition, so they got their stock instead of having the options. I kind of wish it was more based on if the stock was doing well versus getting it no matter what. But if that's the way they pay some of the board members, it is what it is, and most companies do that. So nothing looks out of the ordinary in terms of insider trading and in terms of their selling activity. I would have liked to see a little bit more buying opportunity or more people buying it because I find that really valuable information. When an insider is buying a company, they already have a lot of shares and it's usually a majority of their portfolio. So if they're actually stepping out and buying more, it makes me think this thing is so cheap, they just want to own it at that point. So it would have been really cool if I saw that as well. But really, my thought process is more about that dividend and feeling that it's pretty secure. I know that can change and that can change in any company. The other thing is it's not like I'm privy to the discussions in house and what's really going on because a lot of times even when earnings look like they're negative or whatever's going on, oftentimes that's just a tax strategy and not a reality of what's going on in terms of, revenues look good too, so I took a look at that. And if revenues are still good, but something doesn't make sense in the earnings, sometimes they're taking a loss on purpose because it's an advantage to do it now. Sometimes it was something that they have to take because they set it up years ago. There's just certain things that are going to be in the books that are going to be hard to tell by doing an analysis. Also, the other thing that I say sometimes that I really want to stress, any research that you and I do, if we are not insiders or we're not politicians knowing that the laws are going to change, is information that these multi-trillion-dollar hedge funds have as well, and they factored into their pricing models of a stock. It's very hard for stocks to get way out of range of what the values are outside of what emotion does and basic sentiment, just because it's become so intricate as to how their models work, and they're so big in terms of how much money are in these funds. If a large company gets really out of whack in terms of its valuation, typically they'll come in and buy or sell it to push it back into a fair value range. Now, of course, their systems are not going to be perfect either, so it's not like you can rely on that as well. But it makes me tend to think, for the most part, any large cap stock is going to be pretty fairly priced. That's where I like to bring the emotion into it. I love that people don't like Target. I have no affinity one way or another, and it's not a company I would put on my list of like best companies in the world that I want to own, even though I put it in my set it and forget it account. I just think they're an okay company, but I think at this price valuation, they seem exceptionally cheap, and I don't really see them not being around. I think they do a decent business. And the other point that I said earlier, if the economy slows that badly, it's not like Target is going to be the only thing impacted. It would be all companies in the retail space, not just Target. So I'm not super worried about direction outside of what goes on in the economy. And with the overall market, I seem to be getting more and more confident that what's going on with the tariffs and what's going on with the market is as normal news. It's just outside noise that we should really ignore. And I'm beginning to see this as a really good buying opportunity. I'm not comfortable with it because I am worried about a worldwide recession. I think there's a lot of good arguments that we're at this really pivotal point right now. I think there's a real possibility that we push too far and we cause real problems. But I also think that, I can't even think of the phrase right now, but like heads will prevail. I think that neither China nor the US really wants that. And I think both sides will back off in some fashion. Yeah, I still tend to lean that China doesn't always, just because of the way that their government is set up, and that the president has more of an ability to just make those decisions without it impacting his presidency. But I also think that they're not the country they were 40 or 50 years ago, where things can, like, they have a middle class and people are going to get upset and they're going to make complaints. It might be behind closed doors, but it's going to be felt, and they can't just crush the economy because they just want to win at whatever fight we're at with the US. China saying that, not us. So that's kind of my thought there. It's not as easy for President Xi as it might have been for previous presidents and people running the country, just because it was a different country in terms of the way people lived. There was just the low end class and the really high end class. With this emerging middle class, I think they have to cater to what they want in the world and can't just crush their own economy either. So I don't think China wants a terrible recession. I don't think the US wants a terrible recession. I think backing off on the cell phone and computer chips portion of the tariffs goes along that lines of, it just shows that people are going to back off as time goes on. And my guess is in 6 months or so, the tariffs will be old news. There'll be something else going on, and especially because it seems like it's volatile about something, and somebody will be talking about some new item and getting people worked up. But it'll allow the markets to kind of relax a bit. They'll get more comfortable with the volatility and the ups and downs, and I think we trend back up. Of course, that could be wrong. I'd be prepared for anything right now, but I'm getting a little more comfortable that the news is just noise. So I got a couple different spice combinations I'm going to try. The funny thing is, I'm never going to remember which is which. So it's kind of silly that I'm going to break it up. But the smokers hit temperature. I want to give it a little bit longer to really fill up with smoke before I put them in. Obviously, I'm going to take paper towels. They look like they've dried out some, and then I'll add some of the spices. What I typically do is just some salt, pepper, garlic, and paprika, and then I have this. Somebody gave it to us as a gift, this smoked dat butt that I'm gonna try out, and then we just have this truffle parmesan one. My wife likes that stuff, so I'm gonna make a little with that. And since she's being so good about going to yoga, and as always, she sponsors these videos, I have to kind of cater a little bit to that. What do you guys think about the markets? One of the ones I feel the most interesting or see what's going on that makes it tough for me is the housing market. Because if the tariffs go through and nothing really changes from what's going on now and the economy catches itself, and trust me, if it all goes through and if we see prices go up another 10, maybe even 20% in the wherever it is that we shop, people are going to be complaining. They're going to talk about how the economy is going to crash, how nobody can afford it. But I think that's kind of natural. Like everybody likes to complain, nobody likes higher prices. So of course they all think that means the economy is going to crash because they can't afford the things that they used to, and that's frustrating. And life is tough, and I don't mean to downplay it because it's frustrating for everybody, not just you, not just me. It just is. And they've also watched their 401ks drop. So if they had plans for retirement and now that gets pushed out further in their minds, all of those things put a lot of stress on people and make them think that the economy is doing terribly. At the same time, if it isn't doing it terribly and the data continues to be okay and there's inflation going through the system, I would expect to see housing prices continue higher. And even in a scenario where interest rates continue higher, which makes no sense to me. Like, I don't want it heard the wrong way because, to be fair to home buyers, to be fair to the doom and gloomers, like prices are high and interest rates are high and monthly payments have gone up a lot, but inflation is inflation. And I know that sounds stupid, but if the price of your eggs or the price of your bread or the price of a piece of paper is going higher, so is the price of a house and so are your stocks. That's kind of why I'm beginning to think this is a huge opportunity to be getting long, because if the tariffs go through and we have some inflation and we have a weaker dollar, all of those things would indicate higher prices for stocks and housing. The reason we're falling off is there's a fear of a recession, and it upticked huge in that betting market. I forget the name of it. And same with a lot of the banks that are saying their percentages have gone from like a 10% to 50 or 60%. Maybe their estimates are just off. Maybe I'm underreacting and overly positive, but I also think the economy is still strong and doing okay. Every time I go somewhere, I'm shocked. I'm shocked at the prices and I'm shocked at how busy they are. The restaurants and the casinos are jam packed. You go on a Saturday, and I know I'm using a Saturday. If you don't have a reservation, you'll be lucky to get a table at a lot of these places. Even outside the strip, that's the case. It's amazing how busy so many places are. And don't get me wrong, I know places that are struggling at the same time, but it just seems like the places that are doing fine are really doing well. So if prices went up 20% from where they are, I don't think that's really going to crush their business, and I don't even know how much they slow down. If a bottle of shampoo is $8 and it goes up to $9.60, I don't know that somebody isn't buying it now. Or even if you buy a more expensive one that is running, 28 or $30 for the bottle, and it now goes to 36, same thing. I don't think that that means people aren't going to continue getting those things. I used an example about a car where they already have put on the sticker the tariff tax and they're charging for it. I think the auto dealerships are actually pretty busy. I don't tend to invest in autos, but maybe that's a good opportunity too. Anyway, I'm going to make three different sauces for those of you who care. Hot sauce is typically just, I mean, like buffalo wing sauce. It's typically just butter and some hot sauce. I didn't have what I normally use. I do tend to use the Franks like they'll use in the restaurants, but that's they're using Franks, and they typically are getting like a liquid butter or margarine type of thing and doing that. And then honey mustard is really easy too. All honey mustard is some mayonnaise, some honey, and I grab my in-laws. They're so cute and they're so nice. They 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 constantly bring us these really cool, neat, kitschy type of sauces and whatever it is. And they got some barbecue sauce. They got us some tomato sauce, a honey hot tomato sauce that I kind of looked at the label and thought "Ugh." It was delicious. But they got us both of these honeys, and I'm going to open up whichever one I think is going to get me in less trouble, because I'm sure whichever one I open is the wrong one, and I'll get in trouble either way. But we got these this skinny sticks, bees and trees, honey maple syrup. Looks a little thin. And then we have this thicker one. The thin might be better for making the sauce, actually. This 100% pure, organic, raw, unfiltered honey by Nate's. So they picked those up, and honey mustard is just mayonnaise, mustard, and honey. Three simple ingredients, and just do it to taste as to how you like. In fact, if anybody's curious, ask me. I have the best ranch recipe. When we had the restaurant, we made ranch from scratch, and it's so easy. It's so easy. It's like four ingredients, and I'm telling you that's it, and you will have the best ranch you've ever had. So if you like ranch, say in the comment section that you'd love the recipe. I'll be happy to share it. And then they also bought this Sam's hot and spicy barbecue sauce that I'll probably do a honey barbecue and mix this with some honey too to do a third different sauce for the wings. My plan is when they're done in the smoker, I've given it about an hour and a half at a lower heat than recommended. I find cooking on a lower heat in the smoker is good as long as the smoke is flowing. I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to finish it all on the barbecue. I'm going to coat it in the sauces, let it kind of get that charred into it when I cook it off, and see how they are. Odds are I'll post this video before we taste it, so you won't get to see the reactions, also because I'm a little nervous. Never did smoked wings, so it may come out lousy. Um, but we'll finish up this video, do the editing while it's smoking, and get it posted. And maybe I'll have some time to do a video short of how it came out. So now tell me what you guys think about Target in the comment sections. Do you think it's a good investment right now? Do you think the price is attractive? Do you hate Target? And if so, why? Do you have data-based reasons as to you see a slowdown and earnings aren't what I see it as, and or an inability to be able to pay the dividend? Like, what do you guys think? Or is it as simple as I just hate Target because I don't know. I know they went woke at some point from what I saw in people's comments on videos. And then I guess they undid it and other people got all upset and somebody somewhere is boycotting all their stores. Because really, when I started talking about them in other videos, one of the things I was talking about is the amount of theft they were having and the store closures, because everybody saw that as negative news. And quite honestly, if you're Target and you're able to close stores that aren't profitable because whether they have too much theft or they're just not doing enough in sales, in the long run, I see that as actually, you know, a, a good thing. Like if you're able to get rid of underperforming stores and just focus on the ones that are doing well and then start looking to expand again, I think that kind of cleans up your bad stuff and lets you focus on the good. Either way, I'm curious in the comment sections. Please do me a favor. Let me know what you guys think of Target. Are there other stocks you want me to do a deeper dive into, whether it's ones I talk about or ones I don't? Please, maybe not ETFs, because ETFs are great. And if it's something you're interested in and you're buying, like go right ahead. But it's very hard to do an analysis of an ETF because they incorporate so many stocks into their portfolio. It's really just a way in my mind to mitigate risk and not something that like you can judge an ETF. Like maybe they have good people who are managing the funds, or maybe it's just AI, and if their cost of owning that fund is low is pretty much all I'd be looking at if I'm looking at an ETF. But individual stocks, I'm happy to take a look at them. The one that I've been having a tough time doing my analysis on, which is a company I love, is Whirlpool, because it looks to me like they probably had a one-time expense or something that's throwing off the data for their earnings, which makes it hard for me to do the analysis as to if I think they're the bargain that I think they are. Whirlpool looks really attractive to me, but when they updated last quarter's earnings into their numbers, it looks like a negative, and once it shows a negative, then all of a sudden all the data doesn't make sense. And from what I remember about the earnings report, it wasn't really a negative, so I don't understand why it's updated that way in all the places that I look. Anyway, if any of you know, by all means, make a comment in the comment section on that as well. Um, I thought the quarterly earnings report sounded just fine, and then all of a sudden, a couple weeks later, it updated and all the data is backwards and negative. Um, so I couldn't really see anything. Anyway, if you could do me a favor and hit that thumbs up button, well, that is the like button. I was about to say smash the like button. So if you could hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, make some comments in the comment section, I'd really appreciate it. I'm probably going to end the video here unless something else comes to mind, and then I'll pop back on and talk about it. I was going to talk a little bit about Bitcoin that's had a bit of a recovery, um, but we'll save that for another time. I know most of you don't really care about crypto or Bitcoin anyway. I have been watching the currencies. I don't know if I made a comment. I said something to my friend that I still think the dollar's extremely strong, and dollar trends tend to go on for 10 or 20 years. And I think we're finally reversing where we're going to see a weaker dollar. So I'm probably going to pick up some of the currencies of countries that I want to visit within the next 5 or 10 years, because I feel like that's my only no lose trade. You know, if we want to go to, like, I know I want to go back to Malaysia and I want to go to Thailand. So if I buy the Malaysian ringgit or I buy Thai baht, if my timing is wrong and the dollar continues to get stronger and I've overpaid a little bit, it's really not going to bother me that much. But if I'm right and the currency starts to weaken, the dollar, and those currencies become more expensive to buy, it'll make it tougher and tougher to go visit there for a vacation in the future. Whereas if I just buy it now and put enough to go on a trip there in a drawer or put it in a safe deposit box at the bank or whatever it is, if in time I'm correct and the dollar weakens, well, I won't have such a tough time going and visiting the country because I'll have locked in my price today. So I feel like it's win-win either way. If the dollar gets stronger, great. I'm not super concerned. It's not going to impact much in terms of a decision like that. But again, if the dollar gets weaker, it might impact where I never go to some of the places that I might want to go. And it's easy enough for me to go in and lock those prices in today or this week and not worry about it so much. And if I don't go there for 5 or 10 years, it's fine. It's not like the money goes bad. I'll just use it whenever we end up going. Anyway, again, if you could do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, and also make some comments in the comment section, that would be super cool. Have a great rest of your Sunday. I'm sure I'll talk to you guys either tomorrow or the next day or sometime soon.